I'm Alfred Ocansey this evening. The Ghana National Association of Teachers NAT raises alarm about the imminent shutdown of public basic schools over government failure to release capitation grants. We'll tell you how this is impacting on the running and administration of the schools as a public basic schools across the country. Stay with us here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Also, a health minister, Kwekwa Jumameno, says critical childhood vaccines which have run out across the country would arrive within the next 3 weeks after government paid some $6.5 million to UNICEF. Vaccines against childhood killer diseases have run out since the last quarter of 2022. Stay with us. We'll dig deeper into this particular development as we're learning that a number of the health facilities say they cannot cope for the next 3 weeks. Also, the Ghana School Service says a survey reveals 10 out of 16 regions of the country are fast losing their population as a result of migration. Volta, Northern, Upper East, and Upper West are amongst the top areas as the regions losing population, especially to the Greater Accra region. We'll find out what are the cause factors and then also the push factors leading to this development. We're getting to all of that with the Ghana School Service data and some analysis going into it. We have details in the world of business as well as sports and entertainment coming up in the next 60 minutes here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Welcome. We're live on Facebook. If you go onto our Facebook page right now, it's at 3FM 927. We're streaming videos of all the stories we're going to be talking about here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. That's at 3FM 927. Let's go straight to issues of health because the health minister, Kwekwa Jumameno, says critical childhood vaccines which have run out across the country would arrive within the next 3 weeks after government paid some $6.5 million to UNICEF. Vaccines against childhood killer diseases have run out since the last quarter of 2022, with measles the most troubling as there is an outbreak in the northern part of the country. What we're learning is that there's a measles, suspected cases of measles in all 16 districts of the northern region. That's how serious the situation is as we speak. Now, parents across the country have continued to express worry over the development, calling on government to expedite action on the vaccine procurement. Appearing before Parliament to answer questions, Health Minister Kwekwa Jumameno assured of no further shortages in the country.
I went to the ministry. Right, I was so worked up. We're trying to negotiate with Gabi and our donors to actually continue to give us vaccines once we started paying for the arrears. We inherited over $15.8 million equivalent in vaccines. There was shortage of vaccines, and we even had recorded close to about 358 infections in that particular year, 2016. I have statistics here. Mr. Speaker, it's a very serious, public interest issue. The assurances I will give, and I can give for the first time in the chamber here, that this will not happen again. And I will advise that you help me in my advocacy to get adequate funding for vaccines, even the health insurance budget, right? So when we meet with committee, we have always been talking about it. And even in the chamber, it has come up. So that if Parliament approves adequately for us, we always have our budget well defined, we will be able to supply. And I'll assure you that whatever challenges that happened, I don't think we are going to face these possible challenges any longer. And I'll stand here and assure the House that within the 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we will get vaccines. Possibly, even probably before that. Even probably before that. So I can't lay my hands on specific dates. But even probably before that, we may get the vaccines, probably even earlier than the 2 weeks that I'm talking about. Throughout the period, we made close to $6.4 million equivalent to UNICEF, who supplies us the vaccines.
So that's the health minister, Kwekwa Jumameno, yesterday in Parliament, giving those assurances. But as we speak, the assurance the health minister is giving is for the future, that there will be no shortages in the future. $6.5 million has been paid to UNICEF so far. But the earliest the country, as in Ghana, can get these vaccines that we need urgently, the BCG vaccines, we're talking about the measles, and then the polio vaccines. These three critical vaccines, the earliest Ghana can get is in the next 3 weeks. That's according to the health minister. So let's understand the situation on the ground now. And the president of the Pediatric Society of Ghana, Dr. Hilda Mantibia-Boy, is joining us on the telephone. Dr. Mantibia-Boy, thank you so much for joining us on Hot Addiction. So you've just heard the health minister. He says that the earliest we can get the vaccines is in the next 3 weeks. Can you cope between now and the next 3 weeks?
Good evening to your listeners. I'll just say that we are happy that there has been a response from the Minister of Health addressing the issues that have been raised over the past weeks. We are happy that steps are being taken, definitely. Unfortunately, we all know what the situation is, that the children are continuing to get the infections, and that is where the problem is. We had hoped that we could get it, let's say, this week, as was promised earlier. Unfortunately, we have another timeline, which is not even very definite, but we are hoping that by that time it would come in. There's not much we can do. Once children get the infections, what we will then do is to treat it. When adults and other people catch the infection, what we can do then is to treat it. But what we really need also is to prevent it, and it's the vaccines that are going to help to prevent further infections or outbreaks, if I can put it that way. We know now that many of the cases that have been suspected have been in the northern region, and every day we have flights moving from Accra to the northern region. We have flights moving from the northern region to here. We have people moving all across the country. So what will happen, or what we expect to happen, is in the next few days, weeks, we will start getting cases across the country, because human beings will be moving as part of their daily activities, and they will be carrying whatever infections they have along with them, infecting children and adults. And when we talk about measles, for instance, measles does not just infect children, it infects adults too. We know that children less than 5 years and people who are 20 years and above are more likely to have severe infections, but every age is at risk of getting the infection, whether or not you are vaccinated. But most importantly, if you have anything that suppresses your immune system, diabetes, HIV, on cancer treatment, or any of those therapies, you are more likely to also catch the infection compared to those who have been fully vaccinated in the past. And that is why we are strongly advocating that we have the vaccines and we have them now. We know it's not definite like that. I'm personally a bit afraid that the timelines might move again as they move from the very, very first time, and that is also worrying to us. But I'm just hoping that we will have them in as soon as possible, like now.
And I can understand why you make the point about, you not putting so much trust and confidence on the timelines, because even the health minister himself wasn't too sure. I mean, if you listen to the voice that we played, that when he was speaking before Parliament, he said in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But he admitted that it is not within his power, because this is a global situation. I mean, so that's the level of uncertainty that we will have to deal with, over the period, is it not?
It's really like a sad situation, and we should not have been here in the first place. I'm glad that it was admitted that, yes, I don't know whether it's slipped but we shouldn't have been here in the very first place. I'm just happy that he's saying it won't happen again. But we are hoping that we get the vaccines now. So if there's anything more that the government can do, they should just go ahead and do it and give us a better assurance than what we have received from the Minister of Health.
So from the point you're making is that there's a possibility this measles outbreak in all 16 districts of the northern region may not just be limited to the northern region as we speak, for as long as people are moving from the place.
Definitely. You know how, you remember the time of the COVID? It was in China, it was here. Before you know it, it's all over. It's all over, and people are moving. You may not even know that you have the infection. You may have come into contact with somebody, you move somewhere with a virus, and then you infect others. So it's very possible that there'll be people in Accra already who have the infection. And yes, our members have started seeing suspected cases. So we are worried. Let me just put it that way. We are worried about what the situation is now. And it's really, we are currently even doing a training for healthcare professionals to build capacity in the diagnosis and in the management of measles. You and I know, however, that there's a limit to what everybody can do. And at the end of the day, what we need more is to get the vaccines, which will help to prevent further infections.
See, and just for the bit of education and for the benefit of our listeners and viewers on Facebook as well, what is the vulnerable population at risk because of this shortage of the vaccines that we're dealing with? Because there's a lot more concentration on children. Are they the only vulnerable population?
No, children are not the only people who are vulnerable when it comes to infectious diseases or diseases that can spread through a germ. Anybody whose immune system is weak or is not strong can easily have infectious diseases. So when it comes to people who have immune suppression or their immune system not functioning very well, people with HIV/AIDS are one, people who have cancer are one, people who have cancer and are on treatment are also part, diabetics are part, pregnant women are part, the elderly are also part. So the example is you may have children at home and you may have their grandparents who are taking care of them, granddaunts, grandma. All these people are vulnerable because their immune systems are not that strong. And in the case of measles, those who are below the ages of 5 years are more likely to get a severe infection. Also, even adults who are 20 years and above also are at risk of having severe infections when it comes to measles. So really, it's everybody, and it doesn't matter whether you have been immunized previously or not. If you have been immunized previously, it means that you have some protection and you are less likely to get the infection. But even if you have been immunized previously and your immune system is low for any of the reasons that I mentioned above, you are still susceptible and you can get the measles infection.
Oh, that means we're all at risk. Essentially,
we are all at risk, Alfred. And for us healthcare professionals, me as a pediatrician, when I come to the hospital and I see children, I sit at the OPD, I see children come in and go with all these respiratory tract infections, I also tend to get them. And I'll take them home to my kids as well. So it is like that to my family at home. So health workers are also at risk. Everybody is at risk.
So, taking into consideration the persons in the vulnerable population, which we say we are all in there, how will the 3 weeks waiting period impact on all of us? On this vulnerable population?
You may say that 3 weeks is very little time, but within that 3 weeks, look at the numbers who could potentially have been immunized. Look at the numbers who potentially could have had catch-up immunization to improve their protection levels. And that is where you can then have an idea of what we are missing with every single week that goes by or every single day that goes by. And children are also already catching these infections. It's not like it's something that has just happened. The shortage has been around for a while, and so we have quite a number of people who have not been immunized, and we are sort of delaying what we really, really need the most at this point. We'll just continue to urge the government to do whatever it takes to get us the vaccines in within the shortest possible time. And I strongly believe that they will be able to. if they work hard at it, they will be able to.
And finally, from what we're getting from your colleagues, the BCG vaccine is what the children need or babies need at birth, correct?
Yes.
So the moment they are born, they have to be administered with the BCG.
Yes.
And that is one of the three in short supply.
Yes.
And so then how are babies going to cope? I mean, the babies are going to be born between now and the next 3 weeks before the vaccine comes.
So what it is that the BCG vaccination is supposed to be given at birth. As it's not available, the earliest time it becomes available, the babies need to be vaccinated with it. What it also means is that they can easily catch the infections from the tuberculosis. And the BCG, it protects you from getting very bad forms of tuberculosis, the ones that can go to the brain, the ones that can go to the bones and all. But then it doesn't really protect you against getting tuberculosis at all. So even if you have been vaccinated against tuberculosis, you can still catch tuberculosis, except that you are protected from getting like severe forms, if I may put it that way. And so that is where the issue is. And so we continue to encourage that around these times when babies have not been immunized or there are shortages in vaccines, parents need to limit the numbers of people that they expose their children to, because everybody is carrying loads of germs as they move about, and these germs can infect the children. So they should try and avoid overcrowded places, avoid exposure to other people where possible, or many people where possible, to protect them. And then the breastfeeding. So breastfeeding is really protective. Breast milk, sometimes we call it the first vaccine, the breast milk that the mother gives to the baby, because it contains antibodies. So we continue to encourage that mothers breastfeed their babies exclusively.
Very, very important information there. Dr. Hilda Mantebia-Boy, thank you so much for this. Appreciate it, as always.
Thank you.
Great. Dr. Hilda Mantebia-Boy is the president of the Pediatric Society of Ghana. And this is to you, parents and mothers especially. And all of us, we're learning that we are all within the vulnerable population when it comes to this outbreak, and then also the shortage of vaccines, especially the measles. Now, let's go on to the other telephone line now. Dr. Sebastian Sandare is a member of parliament for the Dafiama Busi constituency, and much more importantly for this conversation, is a member of the Health Committee of Parliament. In fact, he filed the question that the health minister responded to yesterday. He's joining us on the telephone. Dr. Sebastian Sandare, thank you so much for joining us on Hot Edition. The health minister, in response to your question, gave a 3-week notice or a timeline for the arrival of the vaccines. Was it definitive? Or you also, as the health professionals have said, saw some sense of doubt within this timeline that was given? Hello?
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 Yeah, hello?
Dr. Sandare, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. I was asking, I mean, you filed the question yesterday with the minister responded to. Did you get the sense of the 3 weeks timeline being a definitive one, or the minister sounded unsure because of what he says is the global situation as we're dealing with?
Right. The minister responded with an uncertain timeline, because in his official report, in the statement that he read, he used within few weeks. It was upon a follow-up question by the ranking to give a specific timeline that he then suggested within 2 to 3 weeks. So what it means is that the minister for now is not certain when the vaccines will be delivered, which as the owner of the question, I found myself not being happy with it, because we are dealing with an emergency public health concern for that matter, and we should be sure as to when the vaccines.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Honorable, yes, I can hear you.
Yes, yes. So what I'm saying is that the minister for now is not sure himself when the vaccines will be delivered, which I find very, very unfortunate.
See, now, based on that uncertainty that you identified in answering your question, then did you find out a bit more from the minister to have some sense of certainty that indeed in the next 3 weeks we're going to have these vaccines arrive after paying for it, $6.5 million?
Yes, we did. You know, after my questions, other members followed up, and we wanted that clear assurance to the House that, look, this is the timeline that I'm giving, so that if by that timeline is not delivered, the assurance committee would take some action on the minister. But, you know, he was very clever. He dodged that kind of giving assurance to the House. So it remains that he's not certain, and he put it in such a way that he didn't want to commit himself. And therefore, we will give him the benefit of the doubt. He said 2 to 3 weeks. Payments have been done, and we expect no other explanation but to see the vaccine being delivered within 2 to 3 weeks.
See, and he made the point as well that the funding to procure these vaccines are not approved in time by Parliament. Is it really the case?
That I would differ from him, because, look, we find ourselves in this situation just because of lack of adequate planning and placing priority on the issue of getting vaccines for our children. I mean, and basically that is that. No other explanation would be tenable, because it's just a planning failure. If you want vaccines in 2023, I mean, you don't enter 2023 and be trying to meet the demand based on emergency basis. You should have done everything, you know, in 2022, so that by the time you enter 2023, your vaccines are available. It's just a simple procurement issue. They try to give all sort of reasons, but look, I mean, it's basically the fact that they didn't plan adequately as a country. Because, to the best of my knowledge, I can't remember the last time, going back 10 years, that we had such a national emergency that we find national shortage of routine vaccines for children. Yes, you might have 1 or 2, but that was geographical. Maybe you may find them in Accra, but I'm not say in Upper West, and then adequate measures will be taken to move them from Accra but to have that national large-scale shortage, to the best of my knowledge, I can say that it is something that is happening, you know, under the MPP government for now, which is unacceptable.
Dr. Sandari, thank you so much for your time. We'll see how things play out in the coming week. Dr. Sebastian Sandari is a member of the Health Committee of Parliament. He is the member of Parliament for the Busia Ese constituency, joining us on the telephone on this. In fact, he was the one who filed this question in Parliament that the Health Minister, that's Kwajima Meno, had to appear before the House to answer that question. And there's still that level of uncertainty about the timeline of this 3-week period. We're expecting the vaccines to come in. What we're learning on the global scene is that 25 million children missed out on vaccination in 2021. This is 6 million more than in 2019, and the highest number since 2009. But here in Ghana, there are 3 basic vaccines in short supply: the polio vaccines, the BCG, which is administered to babies at birth, and the measles vaccines as well. That's what we understand. We are all at risk, irrespective of if you have been even vaccinated before or not. That's how serious the situation is. We'll keep an eye on this as the days go by, but this is Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. And the latest survey by the Ghana School Service detailing internal migration of households and families within the country has identified 10 out of the country's 16 regions as out-migration areas. What this means is that the regions, which include the Volta, Northern and Upper East and West regions, are moving indigents to areas like the Greater Accra and the Ashanti regions. The survey, which studied migration patterns between 2010 and 2021, revealed Greater Accra, Bono East, and Ahafo regions are receiving a lot of the migrants from other regions. Professor John Anafi is an associate professor at the Center for Migration Studies at the University of Ghana, Legon. In fact, he presented this particular report. He was part of the researchers that put together this report that's giving some serious revelations about development. Dr. Anafi, thank you so much for joining us on Hot Edition. But before that, I want us to take a listen to the concerns about the migration issues that were raised.
10 of the regions are out-migrating regions, sending people out. And only 6 are in-migration regions, receiving people through migration. But you could see that if you come to the tail end, the Volta region, Upper East and Upper West, the magnitude is very, very high. And so if that continues, it will not bode very well for those regions. They may be forced at a certain point in time to import people into those areas to help develop those regions. Then the other one, the migration effectiveness ratio. All what it is saying is that how do the individual regions contribute to the redistribution of population within the country. So again, the 6 countries that experience positive net migration, they also experience positive migration effectiveness ratio, with Greater Accra showing the highest. So it is 58.9. So this one looks at how busy are the borders of the individual countries. So it looks at the gross turnover, both those who are moving in and those who are moving out, and puts them together and gives you a figure, the gross turnover. So the migration effectiveness ratio is just the ratio of the net migration over the gross turnover. So if you do this calculation and you get 100, for example, and it is positive, then it means that country, that region is just receiving migrants.
That's Professor John Anafi, an associate professor at the Center for Migration Studies at the University of Ghana, Legon. Also joining us on the telephone is Godwin Odei Jibi, who's an assistant chief statistician at the Ghana School Service, a part of the team that worked on this migration data we're dealing with right now. Mr. Odei Jibi, thank you so much for joining us on Hot Edition. Now, explain to us what the Ghana School Service sought to achieve with this survey on the migration, which is given this detail.
All right, thanks very much, and we appreciate the CV3 for giving Statistical Service the opportunity to explain the report released yesterday. Actually, it wasn't a survey, but it was part of the report which we outlined for the 2021 population and housing census. So if we listen to Professor Anefi very well, for the migration, he talked about how some regions lost population due to migration. So that is how he was explaining, taking into consideration the net migration and then the migration effectiveness concept. So it is he is giving us, let's say, a caution from the report that there is a need for the fair distribution of the population And you know very well that for migration, it's a key component of the population growth. We know population is grown through fertility, mortality, and migration. So some regions lost population as a result of movement or migration. That is what he was saying.
I see.
That if care is not taken at a point in time, some regions may lose population to the extent that we have to bring in people from other regions to balance the equation.
And that's worrying, to say the least. In fact, for the benefit of our viewers on Facebook, if you go on our Facebook page right now at 3FM927, we are projecting some of the findings and the slides that you provided to complement the details of this report that you have put out there. So if you go on our Facebook page right now at 3FM927, we are putting up some of the slides on this, the migration report that the Ghana Civil Service has put out. And what you're seeing right now is some of the reasons for migration. But I see, Mr. JB, that more than a third, that's 35.9% of the migrants moved to settle permanently, while 24.9% also moved due to marriage, family reunification. But what are some of the other push factors that leads to this migration from these other smaller regions into the urban centers?
Yeah, so as we rightly indicated, people migrate on various reasons. Some migrate for the reason to settle at a place permanently or to stay there for a long time. Others also settle for economic reasons. They are looking for jobs and all those things. And you can see that in Accra, that majority of the those who move to Accra are mainly for job seekers. So they come to Accra with the hope that they will get employment. And that has accounted for Greater Accra in particular having a very high population growth. So there are other reasons why people also move purposely for joining family. For example, my father has been transferred to a particular town. I joined him. So my reason for going there is for me to join my father, like for family reasons. Others also move purposely for education. You know, people try to look for areas where they can get better education. For example, in Ghana, most schools, most endowed schools are located in central region. So if you go there, those in school, why they move there? It's purposely for education. Others also move purposely maybe if there's a disaster. Definitely, they cannot settle in that particular locality, and for that matter, they will have to move. So people move with different reasons.
I see, but then looking at the bar graph, and we're going to move on to the bar graph right now on the migration. While majority of males travel for employment, their female counterparts also travel due to other related marriage and other issues. How should the data that you have put out influence policy formulation, for instance, to ensure that this rural urban migration is controlled?
Yes, so the reason why we have two dominant reasons. So we chose employment and then marriage or family unification. So for males, the dominant reason why they move is because of what? Employment. Seeking for greener pastures and all those things. And for the females, they move purposely to join for family unification or for marriage. You know, in our traditional setup, definitely when a man marries, the woman joins the man. So that has accounted for that higher proportion of females indicating that they move for the reason of marriage or family unification. So for policy-wise, once we've identified that people move, especially for the male, for the employment issue, then avenues to be created, because that's the reason why people move. So if you see our migratory localities or cities, for example, Accra, Kumasi, they go there hoping to get what employment. That is the main reason why they move, and that has accounted for that densely populated Accra as we see now.
And Mr. Jebe, and I recall that when government was making the case for the creation of these 6 new regions, one of the issues they raised was to be able to spread development to the other parts of the country to control rural urban migration. It's been a number of years after the creation of these 6 new regions. This has not happened. So how do you expect policy makers to employ the use of the data in policy formulation?
Yes, so from the perspective of policy issue, the creation of the regions will take some time before we may feel this particular redistribution of resources. Not building a region takes time. So we may not see the effect right now per the data which we have. It will take some time, and the taking of the time will mean that getting more jobs, having resources which may not be different from other regions, which will be a pulling factor for people to take decisions and then move.
See, and apart from the migration, you also looked at emigration. That is people leaving this country to other countries. I mean, this was news that we all knew about, but you've put some data to it. And what's concerning is that the emigrants' population peaks from 25 to 39 years. That is, about 77% of the people who are living in this country are between the ages of 25 to 39. And they are living to countries, that you question why. I mean, we're looking at Sierra Leone, Burkina Faso, Gambia, Liberia, Togo, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, all in search of greener pastures. These are young people living the country. I mean, how should government respond to this, especially giving assurance to young people not to leave to these countries because they form the prime productive age of the country?
Yes, you are right. Yes, we put that statement, and that is the result from the 2021 population and housing census. And basically, is the youth, which who are normally on the move. So that is the peak. It at 25 to 39 years, the most energetic, what is called population moving out for greener pastures. For immigration, or let me put it for migration in general. Yes, even wealthy countries, they even move more because they have the resources to account for the cost involved in migration, which is expensive. So definitely, once they know they can move to look for greener pastures somewhere, they will move. So on the other hand, as a country, we have issues which attract people also to move in Ghana. So it is move out, move in. So, but the worrying aspect is the most energetic population moving out from Ghana, which I think for policy issues, we have to look at it critically and see how best we can get the necessary resources or the necessary interventions to ensure that our energetic population, they stay around to help in the nation building.
And I appreciate this. Mr. Godwin Odejebe, thank you so much for your time on Hot Edition.
Thank you too.
Great. Godwin Odejebe is the Assistant Chief Statistician at the Ghana School Service on the Ghana School Service survey. In fact, when you go on our Facebook page as 3FM927, you see the details of this report on migration by the Ghana School Service. Now, the Ghana National Association of Teachers, NAT, says public basic schools face imminent shutdown in the coming weeks if government fails to pay the capitation grants. According to NAT, the grants have been in arrears for the past 3 years, posing a challenge for the schools. Speaking to 3FM, the Ghana National Association of Teachers General Secretary Thomas Musa Tanko expressed surprise. The president, in a State of the Nation address, failed to mention the delayed payment.
Schools have run for 3 years, and you have paid capitation grant approximately only one. The question is, where will the funding come from? The teachers. Are we saying that teachers should go and look for money to come and run the schools? No. No, we need to ask ourselves, how are the schools running without capitation grant? How are the schools running? How are the schools running? Okay, and I think that it is about time we correct this thing. The capitation grant must be going. All the resources to the basic schools must be going. Poverty is broken by education. The only weapon and the only bomb that the world is aware of, and heaven and earth is aware of breaking poverty, is education. And that is why it has been made a right and should not be taken away from the child. But sometimes we might not say we are taking it away from the child, but the system itself will create certain hindrances that children cannot go to school. Like I've told you, we are expecting 800,000 children to be born every year. How many schools do we build in a year?
Thomas Musa Tanko is General Secretary of the Ghana National Association of Teachers. Della Michelle is here with the latest in the world of business. Della?
Yes, and let's begin with, of course, the Chamber of Agribusiness expressing disappointment in the President's State of the Nation address on Wednesday.
Super. It's going to get the details of these and more in the world of business right after this quick break. Stay with us.
Keys. What could be simpler than a key? Who doesn't have a key? A car key, an office key, a drawer key. But there's one key that rules them all. The house key. The key to a place we call home. The key to the home where everything comes together. The key to a home that is our own. A home where we make life happen with our families and loved ones. Adoha has been working hard for over 30 years to make home ownership within reach for many. Say yes to property with Adoha. Your dream home is one call away. Your dream home is a few clicks away. Visit our Accra project, The Place, by calling 030-2789-757.
And let's now do some business news, as the Chamber of Agribusiness has expressed disappointment in the President's State of Nation address on Wednesday, as he failed to touch on peculiar challenges facing the sector instead of painting a picture that all is well. Aside the omission of investments in the sector as strategies to mitigate food security raised in the country, the President was also silent on the current 5% import levy, which, according to the President of the Chamber, Anthony Morrison, is having dire consequences on the sector. Agro imports used to have incentives that promoted chemical supplies to boost food production. However, the recently passed exemption law imposed a 5% total import levy while removing VAT on these imports. What looked like a relief, according to the agro imports dealers, have rather increased their total import cost. The development the Chamber of Agribusiness says has resulted in hundreds of containers filled with supplies stuck at the port. The supplies include vaccines for livestock, poultry feed additives, and other vitamin supplements for aquatics. Anthony Morrison is Chief Executive of the Agribusiness Chamber.
One major headache facing all the agriculture input importers, be it livestock or crops, is the issue of the 5% total import levy. As we speak, for the past 1.5 months, over 400 containers, a lot of feed additives, and also agro inputs have been stuck at the harbour as we speak.
According to the Chamber, the agro imports may expire if not cleared in time, resulting in farmers not getting adequate supplies or, at worst, getting them at a high cost.
We have tried our best to engage the Ministry and the Ministry of Finance to make sure that we find an amicable solution to this. But, you know, as it stands, the situation hasn't been resolved, and it will hamper on Ghana's food security drive.
According to the chamber, this could be dire as some farmers have already reduced their acreage and others resort to orthodox methods. And away from that, analysts are projecting a rise in demand for the US dollar as the first quarter of 2023 inches to a close. This is likely to put sustained pressure on the cedi. The cedi has experienced fluctuations this year with regular spot-on interventions, but the Bank of Ghana aimed at easing the pressure on the market. Kojo Lecha is a market watcher.
Demand on the whole had, dwindled from last week up to this week. So we had quite a number of offers for dollar on the market. On Wednesday, we closed the dollar cedi around 12.15 bids, 12.35 offers. Yesterday, the market opened quite low, around the 12.20 levels. Just around midday, we saw that the dollar cedi had risen to around 12.40, 12.60 levels. This is obviously due to increased demand. So obviously, pricing becomes an issue when there's a lot of demand for dollar. We're in the last month for the first quarter this year, and it's a cyclical thing. It's expected that demand for dollar would steadily, ramp up till the first month of quarter two, 2023. So we're expecting a sustained demand for dollar from now till maybe ending of April.
And Kojo Lecha is a market watcher. To our final story this evening, Bloomberg is insisting that an oil tanker loaded with crude and idling off the coast of Ghana for more than 2 weeks is of Russian origin. The news portal first broke the story in late February, but was rebutted by some local media with claims that the cargo loaded from Kazakhstan. My colleague Sani Abdurrahman has been following up on the controversy surrounding the origin of the crude, and of course we'll bring you that particular report in our subsequent broadcast. But when you log on to 3news.com, that's all the business news we have for you.
3FM 92.7 Urban Lifestyle Radio Station.
Alfred Ocansey is standing by with all the news in the world of sports. Chris Hughton has named the Black Star squad.
Yeah, most definitely.
A number of reactions coming through with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for the first time in a long while, it's been positive reaction.
Positive reactions.
Yeah, positive reaction. Just because there are a few names that are not in there, and so Chris Hughton has.
What are those names that people are rejoicing over?
I mean, yeah, you know the names.
Yeah, but the Ayew is there.
No, Andre is there. And Andre is there.
Jordan is there.
Yeah.
So what's the joy?
I mean, Jordan plays consistently. If you're looking at the metric of selecting players and you're talking about players who play consistently, then I think that Jordan is one of them. So I mean, you should give him a place.
Who are those who were left out?
I mean, Baba Rahman is injured, but for a lot of people say that Baba Rahman has been eliminated, but we keep saying that he's just injured.
I see.
That's why he's out. So let's just wait and see what comes of
but
this.
John Pencil is in there.
Joseph Pencil. Yeah, Joseph Pencil has come in, and then there's also Majid Ashimeru, who was also there was a lot of clamor for him just before the World Cup, and he has also been given a place to take on Angola. So
we'll see how things play out.
Well, we'll definitely do that. Now to our first story, and no local player was named by Chris Hughton for Ghana's doubleheader against Angola later this month. High performance specialist for FIFA, Faisal Chipsa, explains why the quality of the local league is inadequate for the Black Stars.
The recipe for me is very simple. It's better educators, better coaches, it's better players. And if we are not producing the best of coaches here, I don't think we can produce the best of players. And you can tell we have a coaching problem for sure. So that's where the focus should be. It shouldn't just be organizing courses and charging for coaches to come, because we all know the best coaches may not have the funds to attend. So how can we make coach education easily accessible to most people, especially in the grassroots and the foundation level?
That's Faisal Chipsa there, who's high performance specialist for FIFA. Now, as players in the Ghana Premier League failed to end call-ups in the Black Stars, Asante Kotoko's leading striker, Stephen Mokwala, has been enlisted into the Uganda national team for the upcoming games against Tanzania in the AFCON qualifiers. Ugandan journalist Clive Kiazi justifies the forward's inclusion for the Cranes.
Qualifiers, so him being part of the national team, especially when he's not playing in the domestic league, is what you would say probably an added advantage. And the fact that he's also been in fine form, that was a no-brainer for the coaches to give him consideration. Because if you're going into a campaign where you're playing back-to-back games against the Taifa Stars of Tanzania, you will need all your best players available. And Stephen Mokwala currently is one of our best players, or one of our strikers, the informed strikers, because we have a challenge of having perennial strikers, people who are going to score the goals and all that. We'll have a number of them, and not 7 of them will be able to do the job. When you look at the current strikers who are eligible to represent Uganda at the national level, they would say he's one of those who is in fine form currently, if not the only one. So he's summoning on the Cranes team to prepare for that match, 24th game against the Taifa Stars of Tanzania, a game that will be played in Egypt at the Suez Canal Authority Stadium on March 24th, then the return leg on April 7th.
Well, that's Clive Kiazi there, who's a sports journalist in Uganda, speaking about Stephen Mokwala's addition into the Ugandan national team. Now, Richarlison was selfish and made a mistake in an interview following Tottenham's Champions League exit, says manager Antonio Conte. The 25-year-old forward appeared to criticize Conte over his lack of playing time this season in an interview with a Brazilian television station after Wednesday's last 16 defeats by AC Milan. Antonio Conte says he will do what is right for Tottenham Hotspur.
But first of all, I watched the interview of Richarlison. Yeah. He didn't criticize me. He said my season, and it's right, because his season is not good, because he had a lot of injuries. He started well with us. He had an injuries in Champions League. Then he went in a World Cup, and they missed to win the World Cup, and he had another injuries, serious. He came back and he stayed 1 month out, and then another injuries. He scored 0 goals with us, only 2 goals in Champions League.
Well, that's Richarlison there. I mean, huge trouble with Antonio Conte. Now to our final story. And the undisputed heavyweight fight between Britain's Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk is unlikely to happen, according to the Ukrainian's promoter. London's Wembley Stadium was booked for the 29th of April, but Alex Kruszyuk says Fury has priced himself out of the bout. Kruszyuk says a 60-40 split to the winner was rejected by Fury, and Usyk could instead face Daniel Dubois next. My name is Alfred Ocansey, and that's all the sports news this evening here on the Hot Edition. Alfred.
Yeah, did you feel the air tremor today? I hear there was one.
I was surprised. I got to work and AJ and Giovanni were telling me about it. I'm surprised. Yeah. Where did it happen?
Anyway, thank you so much. Yeah, for Solabe, details in the world of sports. But just on the bit of the air tremor, and Anita Kirkofo is here with the details in the world of entertainment. There's a statement just coming through from the Ghana Geological Survey Authority. It says on Friday, 10th March 2023, an earth tremor event occurred at 9:49 a.m. in parts of the Greater Accra region. The event had a magnitude of 2.8 on the Richter scale. The epicenter is located 1.5 kilometers offshore near Jamestown in a Greater Accra region. The recorded magnitude is indicative of the extent of the tremor. The earth tremor is a minor one, and so it is not expected to cause damage. The tremor was slightly felt in High Street, Ridge, and some other parts of Accra Central. Anita?
Alfred?
Did you feel it too?
I didn't. I mean, I saw it on Twitter. Someone made a post and I'm like, okay, when did it happen? Because
Ridge, dear. It's part of Ridge, no?
It looks like we're lucky then.
Anyway.
If most of us didn't feel it.
Yeah, man. Let's get into what you have, shall we?
All right. And so, still in the spirit of the Ghana month, at 3 Entertainment, we are taking a look at the state of some of Ghana's popular movie cinemas. And the Roxy Cinema in Adabraka, which used to attract hundreds of moviegoers, is now in a sorry state. Also arrived took a tour to the abandoned cinema and reports the entertainment facility has sadly been taken over by squatters and turned into a refuse collection point.
Can't believe it. Going this place, we were having the nice movies, Chinese movies, Indian movies, Love in Tokyo, 5 Shaolin Masters, Disciples of Shaolin, Guantanamo Buddha Show, The Drunken Master. Whatever there's going to be a very big movie. People even do drums, percussions, coming to support the Broma, the so-called Broma. People pay tickets. Some also want to cross the line. Because we want to go and catch early seats in first so they can watch the movie very well.
See.
We used to come here night, when you buy food dress, you come to Rosie, with our guests and everything, I'm worried because it's not functioning. It's not functioning. When you enter the place now, Charlie, when you see Charlie, everything, Charlie, but
And reacting to this issue is Ghanaian director and filmmaker Sokrit Safu, who used to screen his films at the Roxy Cinema, says we shouldn't blame the owners of the cinema, but TV stations showing movies killed the cinema business.
Films at this venue in the 90s.
I've personally taken a tour to some of the centers. Don't blame the owners. The owners of the cinema halls did the right thing. It would be stupid of any owner of a cinema hall to still keep it in waiting for producers to be sensible enough to bring their films. The captains were having, I think, about 7 cinema halls started around Accra. And they employ cleaners, managers, operators, security men, and all that. Every month they pay them. And the producers who were supposed to bring their films to them to show, to make money to cover these costs, have given the films free to TV stations. And the people are watching at the TV stations. And you expect captain to keep paying this cost. Does it make sense? They are not the producers of the movies. They have built the place for you to come and let's do business. And you have decided to give the film free, and you are not making anything out of it. What should they do? So it is right.
To some more stories in entertainment, renowned music producer Fred Chamans has said Ghana's first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, was passionate about growing the creative space and invested heavily to export Ghanaian music and culture to the world.
So when Nkrumah relocated or sojourned abroad, where he also got in contact with a lot of the foreign musicians who were at that time in the 30s performing alongside, he had that kind of vision that for a country to survive and then for a country to come to a certain pedestal, they need the creative space to also join in the fray. So that's why in his wisdom and that of the British, they established the Ghana film industry, the present day TV3. Right. That was where most of the music were produced, films were shot for them to be distributed to the local station, that was GBC or Ghana Television, for them to show it to the world. So Nkrumah really had that kind of idea of the love for the creative arts to the extent that most of the musicians that were in Ghana, I understand Uhuru Dance Band, almost everything that he goes, he takes them along for them to showcase the Ghanaian culture into the foreign, country. So he really loved the creative space. That's why places like the Art Center and a whole lot of things, all these places were created for people to have fun and then bring out the Ghanaian culture in terms of our music exponents.
To our final story, British actor Idris Elba has shared his experience meeting the Asante Hene during his recent trip to Ghana. The award-winning actor, who's 50, sat down with the Late Show host Stephen Colbert on Wednesday.
So, I was in Ghana, actually. I was making a documentary about gold, the Gold Coast. I was really fascinated how human beings are fascinated with this mineral gold, right? And while I was there, in Ashanti Kingdom, which is in Kumasi, the Ashanti king, said, hey, I'm a big fan. Why don't you come to my yearly procession where I meet all of my kingdom, of which is a very big, vast kingdom. And he said, please come down and say hi. What? Yes. So I showed up in my jeans. They were like, no. You got to wear this. And that was the outfit. And it was a really fascinating day. I mean, it was beautiful. The tradition was rich. And you know, this is a kente outfit, cloth. And when you
As you wore one before?
No.
Was it hard? Like, is there difficult? Is it a special way to?
There's a system. So when you meet the king, you know, typically what you have to do is you have to wrap. You have to drop the shoulder down a little bit, and then shake the king's hand. It's part of the tradition.
It's part of their tradition.
Beautiful.
Yeah, you know,
so that'll be all for entertainment, Alfred.
He looked good in the kente, by the way. Yeah, Idris Elba. Anyway, Anita, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. On behalf of the rest of the team, thank you so much for staying with us here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Join me at 10 p.m. on Ghana Tonight on TV3 and also on Key Point tomorrow morning from 7 to 10 a.m. on 3FM and also on TV3. The drive continues with Giovanni and also DJ Abiam together with AJ. I am Alfred Ocansey. Have a great evening.